We're joined by the former U.S. Treasury Secretary Larry Summers. Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for joining us. As you know, the U.S. potentially could default in less than 2 weeks. Less than 2 weeks. Can the President and the House Speaker afford to pause the negotiations right now?
I wish it hadn't happened, but I'm not very surprised. There's always posturing in these talks, and walking out of the talk is a kind of posturing. I think on both sides, there's a need for everybody to feel like they negotiated as hard as they could. And for Speaker McCarthy, it's necessary for him, particularly given the fanatics, if I might call them that, who are in some parts of his caucus, that it looked like they did everything they could to get as good a deal as they possibly could. And so walking out of the talks at least once as leverage and bluster is probably part of the playbook. I wish this hadn't happened, but I think that it is in the mutual interest of everybody to reach a deal, and most important, it's in the massive interest of our country to reach a deal so we don't have to do some kind of experiment with what a default looks like, or what the definition of default is, or any of that.
As you know, Mr. Secretary, there are some growing Democratic calls for President Biden to invoke the 14th Amendment to the Constitution to simply keep paying off debts without congressional approval, if you will. Do you see that as a viable solution?
I very much doubt it. I'm not a lawyer. I haven't had a chance to study the legal opinions, but I think the very substantial majority of legal opinion is that that would be a highly problematic course. I think people would know that it was open to challenge in the courts, and that the challenge at least would have a good chance of succeeding. And I think under those circumstances, everything about the finances of the United States would come under a cloud. So I think that would not be the right tactic. I think this needs to be worked through in regular order. Yes, it's a game of chicken, but in games of chicken, the cars only swerve at the last moment. And I think we will and should find a deal. I don't think the 14th Amendment in the form that's been discussed is a highly credible strategy.
I went back and reread the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, and it begins with these words: the validity of the public debt of the United States shall not be questioned. You know, very precise words indeed. What do you think it will take, Mr. Secretary, to scare both sides into reaching a compromise right now?
I think we need to get closer to the brink than we are right now. I think there needs to be a broader understanding that past a certain point, and I don't know when that point will come, you really are doing real damage to the country, and you can't just buy more time. And so when that deadline gets made very clear and very salient, I think up against that deadline, you're likely to see some kind of resolution. But it's like a negotiation, Wolf, between a union and a management, where you don't have an agreement until just before the strike deadline. It never happens that it all gets worked out well in advance, because then everybody's thinking they're leaving something on the table. And that's my sense about these dynamics. And in politics like this, a couple of weeks are an eternity, and we don't really know at this point whether June 1st was identified by Secretary Yellen as a date at which we had to begin to worry, but we don't know that that is when we would go over the brink, and I would guess it would be a few days later. So we don't know the precise timing, and I think as we get close to the precise timing, this will all get more serious.
Let's hope it does. All right, former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And just